Derek, my brother, 2 years older, 6 inches taller, and for as long as I can remember, the one everyone in this family pointed to when they wanted to describe what strong looked like. You're a black belt. You fought in 3 amateur MMA cards and won 2 of them. You have a frame like a doorway and a laugh that fills a room before you even walk into it. And 3 summers ago, standing in the gravel lot outside the family camp, you looked at me. Your quiet, skinny, no longer so skinny little brother. And you made a bet with our parents standing right there as witnesses. 5 minutes, you said. That's all I'm asking him to survive. 5 minutes with me, and he can have the camp, deed, and everything. You said it like a joke, Derek. You said it the way people say things they've already decided can't go wrong for them. Mom laughed. Dad laughed. I remember the sound of it more than I remember the words. That easy, warm laugh 2 parents give when their favorite son makes a good joke at the expense of the one they've quietly stopped expecting much from. Nobody in that lot thought I was going to say yes. Nobody thought I even could. I rolled up my sleeves. I didn't say much. I never do. That's kind of the whole point of me. But I smiled at you. And I asked you one question before we shook on it. Are you sure you want to test a Marine captain? You laughed at that too, Derek. Everybody did. Because as far as this family was concerned, I was still the boy who used to get benched at every sport I ever tried. The one who joined the military because, in your words, said at Thanksgiving 4 years ago, somebody had to, and it wasn't going to be me. You never once asked what I actually did over there. You never once asked what captain meant, or what it took to earn it, or what 5 years of a life spent training men twice my size to survive things you've only seen in movies does to a person's hands, his instincts, his patience. You just assumed the title was decoration. A line on a resume nobody in this family bothered to read past. This is the story of what happened in that gravel lot, and everything that led up to it, and everything that came after. It's addressed to you, Derek, because you're the one who needs to hear it most. Everyone else in this family already knows how it ends. What you never saw. You never asked what boot camp was like. You never asked what officer candidate school put me through, or what it means to lead 40 Marines through a deployment and bring every single one of them home. You called it his little army thing at my own homecoming, in front of people I'd bled to get back to, and you didn't even notice the room go quiet. You assumed quiet meant weak. That's the mistake you made, and it's the mistake this whole family made right alongside you, because you set the tone in every room you walked into, and everyone else just followed your lead. Mom followed it. Dad followed it. You'd tell a story about your last fight, about the cage, about the cut over your eye that needed 6 stitches, and I'd sit there at the same table having just gotten back from a place I still can't fully talk about, and nobody asked me a single question. Not one. You filled the silence, Derek, the way you always do, and I let you, because that's what I'd learned to do in this family a long time before I ever learned to do it in the Corps. You called me soft once. Not to my face. You're smarter than that. Or maybe just more careful. But I heard about it from our cousin at a barbecue. He's not built like me, you'd said. He got the brains, I got the body. You said it like a compliment to yourself dressed up as generosity toward me. I let that stand too, for years, because correcting you would have meant a fight I didn't think this family was ready to have. And because some part of me, the part that had spent 2 decades watching you get the room's attention just by walking into it, had learned that it was easier to let you have the story than to take it back. You never asked why I chose the infantry track instead of something safer. You never asked why I stayed and passed my first contract when everyone expected me to get out and get a real job. Your words again. At a family dinner I wasn't even at to defend myself. You never asked what force reconnaissance selection looks like, or why so few Marines ever make it through, or why the ones who do stop needing to prove anything to anyone in a gravel lot. You never asked, Derek, because you never had to. This family built you a story where you were the strong one and I was the smart one, and stories like that don't leave room for follow-up questions. They just repeat themselves until everyone believes them, including, eventually, me. But here's the thing about that camp, and about that bet you made so easily. You forgot, or you never let yourself know in the first place, that the title in front of my name wasn't a decoration. It was a record. Every one of those years you spent not asking, I spent training. Not for you. Not for this. But it turns out training doesn't care what it was originally for. It's there when you need it, whether the person underestimating you is an enemy in a foreign country or your own older brother in a gravel parking lot with our parents laughing behind him. What I started doing while you weren't looking. You didn't notice when I started running the hills behind my duty station every morning before dawn, long after most of the guys I'd trained with had scattered to civilian life and let their conditioning slide. You didn't notice when I kept training combatives long after my last deployment ended, not because anyone made me, but because it had become part of who I was. Quiet, precise, unglamorous work that nobody was there to applaud. You didn't notice, because you never asked, that 2 of the men I served with went on to compete professionally, and that some of my off-duty hours over the years had been spent with them, not for a title or a record, but because grappling with people who could actually hurt me was the only thing that ever fully quieted my mind after everything I'd seen. I never once mentioned it at a family dinner, Derek. Not because I was hiding it, because nobody in that house had ever asked me a real question, and I'd stopped expecting one. I started keeping a ledger, of sorts, not on paper, just in the back of my mind, the way you do when you've decided you're done being talked over. Every time you called me soft in front of someone. Every time Mom introduced you first at a party and me second. And this is my other son. He's in the military, like an afterthought tacked onto your headline. Every time Dad asked about your last fight in detail and asked me about mine, only did you stay safe over there, like there was nothing more to say. I wasn't counting to get even, Derek. I want to be clear about that. I was counting because somewhere in the counting, I stopped needing your approval, and that turned out to matter more than anything that happened in that gravel lot later. What you also never saw was the conversation I had with our parents, quietly, about a year before that bet. I told them I wanted to sign the paperwork to keep contributing to the upkeep of the camp, the roof, the well pump, the property taxes that kept climbing every year while you were busy building a following, posting fight clips online, and Mom and Dad were living on a fixed income that didn't stretch as far as it used to. You never asked where the money for the new dock came from 2 summers ago. You just used it. I didn't say anything then either. I was still building the ledger, still deciding whether this family was worth the correction, still hoping maybe you'd notice on your own before I ever had to make you. You didn't notice, because you were busy being the loudest person in every room. That the quiet one in the corner had spent 5 years learning exactly how much force it takes to end a confrontation in under 30 seconds without causing real injury. A skill that has nothing to do with cage lights and crowd noise and everything to do with control. You had trained to perform. I had trained to finish things. Those are not the same discipline, Derek, and that gravel lot was about to teach you the difference. The day you found out. The morning of the bet, you showed up to the camp already in your gear, already warming up in front of a small crowd. Cousins, a couple of your training partners you'd invited just to make it official, Mom and Dad standing near the porch with their arms crossed like they were about to watch something fun and harmless. You cracked your knuckles. You told everyone, loud enough for me to hear from the truck, 5 minutes. He won't last 2. Somebody laughed. I remember it was Dad. I walked up slow. I wasn't wearing anything special, just a plain shirt, sleeves rolled. The same calm I'd worn walking into rooms a lot more dangerous than that one. You looked at me and grinned, and you said something about how you almost felt bad, and I just nodded, and I asked you again, quiet enough that only you and the people closest to us could hear it. Are you sure you want to test a Marine captain? You laughed at that, Derek, the same laugh you've had since we were kids, the one that fills a room. You said something about titles not meaning anything in a real fight. And then somebody said go. And you came forward the way you always do, big and fast and sure of yourself, throwing the first shot like you were still in a cage with lights on you and a crowd chanting your name. I want you to remember what happened next, because I remember every second of it. You threw. I wasn't there when it landed. I'd already moved, low and close, the way you move when the goal was never to trade punches with a bigger man, but to take the fight to a place your size stops matching. Within 4 seconds I had your leg. Within 7 you were on the ground, and I want to be honest with you, Derek. You're strong, you're fast, you deserve every ounce of respect for the discipline that built that body. But strength without control just gives someone smaller and calmer more leverage to work with. By the 20-second mark, your arm was locked out straight, and you were tapping the gravel with your free hand so hard it left a mark on your palm. For seconds to close the distance. 20 to end it. For minutes and 40 seconds left on a 5-minute clock nobody needed anymore. You stood there afterward. I let you up slow, made sure you were all right before anything else, because that was never the point of this, and you didn't know what to say. Nobody did. Mom's arms had come uncrossed. Dad wasn't laughing anymore. Your training partners, the ones you'd brought to watch you win, were the first ones to walk over and shake my hand, because they recognized something in those 20 seconds that had nothing to do with luck. They'd seen real training before. They knew what they were looking at. You said, finally, quiet for maybe the first time I can remember, I didn't know you could do that. And I told you the truth, Derek, the same truth I'm telling you now. You never asked. The last thing I'll say to you. The camp is still in the family, Derek. I never wanted it for myself. I want to be honest about that too. I wanted you to understand, once, in a way you couldn't talk your way around, that the quiet brother you built a whole personality out of underestimating had a life you never once bothered to learn about. That's all this was ever about. Not the deed. Not the win. The asking. Since that day, something shifted, slowly, the way real change usually does. You've asked me questions you never used to ask, about deployments, about what selection was actually like, about why I stayed in as long as I did. I've answered every one of them, because that was always available to you, Derek. It just took you finding out the hard way that there was something worth asking about. Mom introduces me first sometimes now. It's a small thing. It matters more than it should. I don't need you to keep losing bets to respect me, Derek. I just needed you to stop assuming there was nothing here to respect in the first place. And now you know there was. You should have asked. If any part of this hit close to home, if you've got a sibling or a parent or someone in your life who decided who you were before they ever bothered to find out, I want to hear about it. Tell me your story in the comments below. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has been counting the whole time, and one day, they stop staying quiet about it.